Here's the bread that's been sitting overnight in the refrigerator, and you can see how it's puffed up, it's light, full of life, and ready to be shaped. So it's not sticky, but I'm still just putting a light dusting of flour on the counter. I'm going to shape it into a ball, and it's going to go into a big souffle dish. Just lightly pressing out the air, and here's how I shape a ball. I bring up the sides to the center and pinch together the top. And it's better that the counter at this point not be dusted with flour because it grabs on. So when you roll it around like this, it tightens up the outside, and that way you get a better texture to the bread. See, back and forth and around. And now it's ready to go into the souffle dish. You can see I've made a little terrarium here with plastic, and that's because I don't have to cover it with plastic wrap, and it won't stick to the bread, and it will keep it from crusting. So I'm spraying it with grease and flour. Make sure that if you don't have flour in the spray, that you use grease and flour and then knock out the excess. And it's going to go bottom side down into the pan, and then press it in. And it will fill the souffle dish, a 6-cup souffle dish, about half full. And then, at room temperature, it takes about 3 hours to rise. This bread is unusual because it's so strong it can rise 3 times its height. As you can see from the one that's perfectly risen here, it rises right over the top of the souffle dish, and it will continue rising during baking. But it's very fragile now that it's risen and full of air. So use a light touch when you brush the egg glaze on. The egg glaze is going to give it a beautiful golden topping. When you use an egg glaze, you don't use steam in the oven because steam creates a shiny surface and egg creates a shiny surface. But if you use both, they cancel each other out and it dulls. And in this case, egg is even shinier than water. And especially with the cheese, it's really rich and brown when it bakes. The way I get the little bits of cheese in, and they're cut into cubes about 1/4 inch in size, is using a chopstick. Or you can use anything that's about this size. And twist it in so you don't deflate the bread. Although you don't have to worry if you deflate it a little because it's going to pop right up. In fact, I'm going to spray it because that will help it to go in more easily. This tiny little bit of flour isn't going to change the balance of the recipe. And then just use it to push it in. And you still will see the cheese. It's not going to disappear. But that's the point. You want to have a polka dot effect of the cheese. I discovered it the first time I made this bread. It's from Perugia. And I thought, gee, this is my favorite part of it. The little bits of the cheese that stick on the outside, or rather the inside of the mold, on the outside of the bread. I thought, I want lots more of them. And then the idea came to me, why don't I just put them in? And that's how it became the stud muffin. Studded with Gruyere. What could be better? I have now plenty of cheese studded into the top of the muffin. It's going to bake at 350 degrees, lower than most breads because it's so rich. I don't want it to get too brown. 45 to 50 minutes. I have one baking in the oven right now. And I can look and see, yes, it's beautifully golden brown, but I can also use a thermometer to see if the inside is fully baked, because sometimes the top of a bread can be brown and the inside still isn't quite done. This should read at least 190 degrees Fahrenheit in the center. So I'm taking my instant read thermometer and inserting it, and the part that's the last to heat, obviously, is the center. So I'm taking it right by cheese so we don't see a hole, by one of the studded cheese, and putting it in right toward the middle center, and yep, it's 190 degrees. Perfect. If it were 210, it would be fine too. It's such a moist bread, it's not going to be dry no matter what you do. Now the first step is to make sure, because the Gruyere cheese is very sticky, that the Gruyere did not stick to the side of the souffle dish. So I go all around it, and actually if it did stick, it won't come out. You'll just have to redo this knife trick. And now this is a very fragile bread when it's still hot. So in Italy, they actually cool it on down pillows. But a kitchen towel that's clean is also fine. And I empty it out. It's okay if it lands on the top, but it has to cool on the side because the sides will cave in. So I know this looks a little funny, but it really works. And after 30 minutes, rotate it and let it cool, and do this every 30 minutes. It takes about 2 hours to cool. But after the first hour, you don't have to worry if you have to leave. Just leave it sitting like this. And then when it's cool, place it on a cutting board. And it's ready to serve. So there we have the stud muffin. Let's see what it looks like inside. Normally, I don't cut it until it cools because it's so fragile and delicate. But with a nice serrated knife like this one, I can get away with it. I can already see these nice holes with the pockets of coating it, the coating of the Gruyere cheese. But when I cut a second slice, you'll be able to see better. Yeah. See that shiny hole? That shiny part is the Gruyere cheese. This smells heavenly. I call it a giant stud muffin, but it's really a brioche, savory and delicious. Make it for breakfast, brunch, cocktails, anytime. You'll love it. This is Rose Levy Beranbaum with Baking Magic.